In 1982, a team working the ancient beachfront at Herculaneum pulled back volcanic rock and found something that should not have survived 19 centuries underground. Intact human bone, still holding its original collagen. Brain tissue, converted to glass. A wooden roof beam, carbonized on the outside but structurally readable on the inside. Organic material that Pompeii, just 5 miles away and buried by the same eruption, almost never preserves. Both cities died on the same day in 79 AD, when Vesuvius tore itself apart, but the eruption did not treat them equally. Pompeii sat downwind and received meters of pumice and ash, falling slowly enough for most residents to flee. Herculaneum sat at the base of the volcano's western slope, much closer to the vent. It received something else entirely. Something faster, hotter, and far more violent than a rain of stones. For more than 2 centuries after formal excavation began, Herculaneum was assumed to be a lesser sibling of Pompeii. Harder to dig, smaller in area, covered by the modern town of Herculaneum. The material that buried it was not soft ash. It was rock-hard volcanic deposit that required pickaxes and sometimes explosives to remove. Excavators in the 1700s tunneled through it the way miners tunnel through limestone. They pulled out bronze statues and marble floors, but they missed what the volcanic matrix itself had done to perishable materials trapped inside it. The very hardness of the deposit that frustrated diggers was also the mechanism that sealed away an organic record, unlike anything else in classical archaeology. The constraint was heat. Pyroclastic surges, fast-moving clouds of superheated gas and volcanic fragments rolled down the mountain and hit Herculaneum at temperatures estimated between 300 and 500 degrees Celsius. That heat arrived in seconds. It killed every living thing instantly. But here is the mechanism that separates Herculaneum from nearly every other buried site in the ancient world. The surge deposited material so rapidly that it sealed organic objects away from oxygen almost immediately after the thermal pulse passed through. The heat was destructive, but the burial was protective. Those two forces, arriving almost simultaneously, created a preservation environment that no human culture has ever intentionally replicated at this scale. Wood did not burn to nothing. It carbonized, the way a log carbonizes inside a sealed kiln. The outer layers converted to charcoal-like carbon, but the internal structure froze in place. Grain patterns remained legible. Joints and tool marks survived. In the 1860s, early excavators found carbonized furniture, a baby's cradle, even food. Bread loaves and figs retained their original shape beneath a thin shell of carbon. These objects were not fossils. They were not impressions. They were the actual items, transformed but structurally intact, frozen at the moment the heat wave reached them. But the real turning point came much later, when modern recovery techniques reached the ancient shoreline. In 1980 and the years following, archaeologist Giuseppe Maggi's team uncovered the boat chambers, arched stone shelters facing the sea. Inside were over 300 skeletons, people who had gathered there waiting for rescue that never came. Unlike Pompeii's famous casts, which are hollow impressions left by decomposed bodies in ash, these were actual remains. Bone, teeth, in some cases, preserved soft tissue. The difference was not luck, it was physics. The explanation lies in the thermal profile. The first pyroclastic surge was hot enough to kill and to drive off moisture, effectively flash-desiccating tissue before bacteria could begin their work. But the deposit that followed buried the remains under meters of material within minutes, cutting off the oxygen supply that normally drives decomposition. The result was a form of thermal mummification, not intentional, not cultural, but geological. A preservation method created entirely by the speed and sequence of volcanic events. This mechanism also explains the papyrus scrolls. The Villa of the Papyri, a grand seaside estate excavated through tunnels in the 1750s, yielded over 1,800 carbonized scrolls. They looked like lumps of Hittite charcoal. For 2.5 centuries, no one could open them without destroying them. The carbon shell that the heat created was both the problem and the reason the scrolls still existed at all. Without that instantaneous carbonization, the papyrus would have simply burned away or rotted in the wet volcanic matrix over the centuries that followed. The cost of this preservation method is real and measured in permanent losses. Carbonized material is extraordinarily fragile. Early excavators destroyed an unknown quantity of organic finds simply by not recognizing them. Wooden beams were mistaken for volcanic rock deposits. Scrolls crumbled when handlers tried to unroll them mechanically using weighted systems that applied too much force. Every generation of archaeologists has had to develop gentler techniques, and every generation has acknowledged that earlier work caused irreversible damage to material that had survived 19 centuries underground, only to be destroyed in the first minutes of exposure. There is also genuine uncertainty about the temperature estimates. Different researchers modeling the surges have arrived at different numbers. Some studies suggest the first surge at Herculaneum reached 400 degrees Celsius or higher. Others place it closer to 300. The difference matters because it changes what soft tissue could have survived initial contact versus what was destroyed and then sealed. The skeletal evidence shows thermal fracturing and coloration consistent with extreme heat, but pinpointing exact temperatures from bone damage alone remains an active area of forensic study. This is not a settled question. It is an evolving one, with each new analytical method narrowing the range but never quite closing it. Today, Herculaneum gives researchers something almost no other classical site can: direct biological and material evidence from a single, precisely dated moment in the 1st century. The collagen in those bones allows radiocarbon calibration. The carbonized wood allows dendrochronological study. The preserved food allows dietary reconstruction that goes far beyond what pottery residues can tell us. And the scrolls, now being read for the first time using X-ray phase contrast tomography and machine learning-based virtual unwrapping, are yielding previously unknown Greek philosophical texts without ever being physically opened. Each scroll that becomes legible adds to a library that was thought lost forever. What changed in our understanding is fundamental. Pompeii shows us architecture, urban planning, and art. It shows us the shape of Roman life through durable materials, the things that survive centuries of burial under any conditions. Herculaneum shows us the perishable layer: what people ate, what they read, how their bodies responded to catastrophe, and what organic materials looked like on the exact day of destruction. The difference between the two sites is not cultural. It is thermal and chemical. The same volcano, the same eruption, two entirely different preservation regimes based on distance from the vent, surge temperature, and speed of burial. The lesson the site teaches is not about the horror of the eruption, though that was real and final for the people trapped in those boat chambers. The lesson is about what evidence survives and why. Most archaeological sites preserve stone, pottery, metal, the durable skeleton of a civilization. Herculaneum preserves the flesh, not because the volcano was kind, but because it was so fast and so hot that it outran decay itself. The material is still being excavated. Roughly a third of the ancient city remains underground, beneath modern buildings that cannot legally be demolished. Whatever is down there has been sealed in the same anaerobic, thermally stabilized matrix for 19 centuries. The evidence already recovered rewrote assumptions about Roman diet, literacy, and the physics of volcanic death. What remains buried may do the same again. Visual reconstructions shown are illustrative. Facts and interpretations are based on the sources listed in the description. Visual reconstructions are illustrative. Facts and interpretations are based on the sources listed in the description.